And the goal is to bring you your next favorite band.
Thanks for having us. This is a very cool show.
Yeah, so through many iterations, and we finally landed on the weirdest one by far.
Yeah, simple of feelings, and boom, you got a sound.
Yeah.
I remember this one time, I'd been writing some songs, and I went out. I'm just going right in on this story. I went out, and so I was.
The story's longer than the song itself. We'll go ahead and play it.
And listen, it's going to be everybody's favorite band. Welcome to your next favorite band. That's both the show title and our promise to you. We here at Stereophilia Studio are tireless in our pursuit of finding incredible, genre-defiant artists who are either a hot, up-and-coming band or a group that has been delivering for years but have flown under the radar. Tonight, Phillip and Joie Calio, bringing us the post-punk dystopian blues of 7Horse. Each month, we will bring you live streams, audio podcasts, and perhaps even a live concert where you can listen to the stories and hear the music of artists personally curated by us based on what we feel will be worthy of your time. Be sure to subscribe and tune in to each episode because the possibilities are endless and you never know who will be your next favorite band. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Philip Reese.
Hello, and I am your co-host, David Moore.
And this is
your next favorite band.
Yes. And what a special, we're giving people a treat again. A couple weeks back, we did a Wednesday show. Now we're doing a Thursday show.
We're just keeping them guessing.
Yeah, what will we think of next?
Oh, the second Tuesday of next week.
I think you're right. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in this evening. We have such a great show, and we're not going to want to delay too much here. We're going to just banter a quick little bit simply because there's some business to do.
Business to do.
We are sort of in business. There is the No Planet B Jamboree.
April 16th.
And as you like to do, keep us grounded, 2023.
Well, it depends on when they're catching this. I mean,
That's
who
true.
knows? They're tuning in 2027, and
they might show up and then it'd be sad.
Well, I mean, they'd have missed something.
Correct. But by that point, though, we'll be to our 4th annual No Planet B Jamboree. Anyway, this will be the inaugural.
Correct.
And let's bring up this little graphic here. This is teaser 3. So previously we've mentioned that we're going to be promoting the efforts of both the company Reverb and Music Declares Emergency. So we've got very cool, stuff to share there. One's a live guest. One is just some of the information that they're just, basically a company that's very busy doing their thing. So we're going to be able to share their promos, though, and some music that they have specific to their cause. And then we do have the permission to play some very cool music from these artists. El Huri and Blair Captain Crimmins. They're both actually going to share their music and come on live on the show to kind of talk about their passions in these areas. The reason why it says Captain Crimmins is that is a persona that he has for children's music.
I thought he got promoted.
He got promoted. So he did get a promotion, but it's in charge of children's music. But it's children's music specific to the environment, and it just fits perfectly. And also he's a friend of the show. So Blair is going to come on the show and share some of that music that he's writing for kids to listen to. And then, just a stunning approval here. Lorena McKennett is allowing us to use some of her music, which is, again, very focused on the earth. Cicada Rhythm. This was a beauty find by you, David.
They're great duo. I saw them a few years back. From Georgia, right outside of Atlanta.
Correct. And so they have some great music. And then the Darling Sons and Tioga, who have both been on the show before, but also have some cool music, and we're going to share theirs as well. And still some more. So next week we're going to announce who the live performers are and people who gave us some exclusive kind of set performances. And there you have the latest from the No Planet B Jamboree. Sunday, April 16th. If you can tune in, it'll be roughly from 2. It'll start around 2 in the afternoon. Probably go to Eastern time. I was going to get there, but I always like that you're on top of that. Probably till about 5:30. So like the episode, like the interview version, like our typical show here, that's going to probably go from like 2 to 3:15. And then the rest of it will be live music. So that'll be the cool part, is it's just kind of like a festival of sorts to kind of promote and draw attention to.
And it'll be in a beautiful space.
And then, yes, it'll be in the courtyard of the Sun Inn. So if you're in the area, you want to come and be there live for both portions. It's a free.
Please join us.
Yeah, join us in the courtyard. It's a beautiful space. And then if you're not able to join us live, then join the live stream or catch the recording afterwards. It should be a very cool day.
All of that is true.
I struck him silent.
Yeah, it happens every once in a while.
So enough about all that. Let's get to our guest, because there's such great stories to share and amazing music. So for tonight, we do have 7Horse, like we shared. And there's some other aspects to their identities, too, that you may know or recognize or even see on my shirt today that we'll get into as well. But such great music, like it was labeled there, post-punk dystopian blues. I mean, it's just such filthy, awesome guitar and drums and great lyrics and such. So we're going to share a song here from 7Horse called Hippies on Acid. And then David's going to do some bio, and then we'll bring Joey and Phil on the show.
Seven Horse is a two-man band playing their self-described post-punk dystopian blues and have been exploring unfenced territory together for 30 years, with group members Phil Leavitt on drums and vocals and Joie Calio on guitar, bass, and vocals. They kickstarted their partnership as members of Dada, the platinum-selling alt-rockers behind the 90s hits like Dizz Knee Land, and began when Calio and Leavitt began swapping ideas for songs back and forth during downtime from Dada. The band's tune, Meth Lab Zozo Sticker, was used in the 2013 Scorsese film The Wolf of Wall Street and exposed them to a wider audience. Other songs have been featured in Season 1 of Amazon's The Grand Tour and in the game Far Cry 5. The band has released 5 albums, starting with 2011's Let the 7Horse Run, and most recently, The Last Resort, released in 2022.
We're going to bring this back up and let some more Hippies on Acid play, and then bring them on the show. Bring them on here during this video. Oh, and we got a super solo here from Joey. So we'll bring this down a little bit more so we can chat about it while it's going on. So tell us more about this video. It's such a fun one.
Well, we worked with a woman named Caroline Stossel and her husband, who is our still photographer. They shot this. We actually did 3 videos in a day. That was, it was quite a challenge. We did Hippies on Acid, Dave Vominos, and Try to Forget It, all in one 8-10 hour session at a studio in East LA. and moved around to some different environments there, and actually shot, you can believe it, 3
I'm gonna guess Try to Forget It was last for reasons that we'll see later.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to feature that. So we always play some music during the show, but we always play one song after our credits. So everybody stay tuned to the end. And usually it's either my or David's pick as like our favorite song. That's my favorite one from 7Horse is Try to Forget It. So we're going to let that play at the end, and you'll see, and we'll set it up too, but there's a reason why that had to be last.
Yeah. Yeah. It was quite a day, but I think we got some good stuff, and that was, we were very pleased with what we got there.
Oh, sure. I mean, not knowing that all 3 of them were shot on the same day, I was going to compliment you on just the quality of those videos, and to know that you did it all in the same like 8-hour span is like unfathomable.
Yeah, the director was kind of shocked that we were going to try to pull something like that off. We threw it at her as like, here's a challenge for you. We need more than just a single video because we're running a tight ship here. So we've got to get more bang for our buck. So she was able to do it. She's incredibly talented, and thankfully we knew the song so we could do our thing.
Oh, totally. And we're getting some good chat here. Someone asked actually specifically, is it going to be interactive or just view only? Feel free to be interactive. We'll do our best. We obviously do have a story to tell here, but if you've got something that seems to be something you want to either ask about or share, please, by all means, chime in. But thank you all for tuning in. This is wonderful. Joey, anything for you on there? Like you're ripping the guitar there, and we'll get into some of the transitions that happen there, but obviously you must have had a super fun time with that one because it's such a great song, and to sing that and play that type of guitar.
That is a fun song, but I will never forget how you described the solo, and from now on I will call it a super solo. That sounds cool. If I can do a super solo at any time, I'm good. That's awesome. No, that was like Phil said, that was a really long day, but it was one of those things where you just didn't think about it. You just kept going. And it was, honestly, it was pretty fun. I think I'm still kind of recovering from it, even though it was about a year ago. But that was a hell of a day. It was a hell of a day, but we did it. And
you're rock stars.
It was one of these things, me and Phil, it's sort of the story of our life. We, cram 5 days in one day. It just seems to keep happening in our lives. That's how we record records. That's how we tour. That's how we go out to, lunch. I mean, it's kind of the story of me and Phil. We like to get stuff done.
That's excellent. And that's something we like to do on this show. So it's a great transition. We like to tell the story. And you even said it, the story of your life. So what we'd love to do is kind of go back to the beginning here. And there's a start, obviously, where you're younger and you don't yet know each other, but there's this very cool kind of like where it all comes together. But let's start at the beginning because you're both kind of prodigies too. If I understand it right, Phil, you were playing the piano at 3?
That's what they tell me. That I was banging around on a piano at a very early age, but for whatever reason, that really didn't become the thing. It was the drums became a thing for me within a couple of years of that. By the time I was 5, I was playing the drums, and
sure.
And it all started really with I was first a Monkees fan. That was the first music that really resonated. And
people don't give them enough credit. They think they're this like goofball group, but they really wrote very good music.
Well, Boyce and Hart, the Neil Diamond. You've got some of the heaviest writers of the '60s writing music, and the heaviest players of the era, the Wrecking Crew, playing the tracks, and then of course the great singing of Mickey Dolenz and
Davy Jones.
And Peter Tork and Mike
Nesmith.
So, but that was a thing that I saw on television, and Joey's a big Monkees fan as well. But I have a cousin who is 5 years older than I am, and who I always, looked up to as the voice of reason. And she basically said, "No, not these guys, and put me on the Beatles at
awesome.
5. Now, this was. The Beatles were already over by that, or just about to be over by that point. the announcement hadn't been made yet. But I do actually kind of remember hearing that the Beatles had broken up when I was about 5 years old.
Wow.
But that music hit me so hard, and it was Ringo hit me like a ton of bricks, and I became a sort of disciple of Ringo, the approach to playing songs and the lyrics and how the drums relate to the lyrics and the power of melody and rhythm and how those things go together. And so for a long time, my musical education was based solely around the Beatles. And that was all during the 70s, when there was all kinds of other incredible music happening that I kind of was unaware of, because I was so locked and it was almost like a badge of honor that I was a Beatles fan, and that's it, even though and Beatles at that point.
Yeah.
But it did get me on the road to what I do now, which is play songs. I don't think of myself. I mean, I'm a drummer, and I've made a living as a drummer in bands and in shows, playing drums in Blue Man Group and whatnot. But for me, it's always been about songs and songwriting, and that's what I focus on.
But you have such an amazing style. Like you're a very unique drummer. And the best way I could always describe it is like, it's almost performative. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, it's not just drums to keep the beat. It is almost part of the art. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like, it's a very distinct way that you're playing, and I think it's very unique to you.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
For sure, yeah.
Like all great drummers, Phil has a sound. I mean, that's kind of what separates you from just being a guy, as you say, who keeps time, and someone who is a member of something, who is bringing something with his, drum playing. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Phil, you've got a real, especially currently, I really see a real swing to your playing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, because that's rock and roll. That's the Steve Jordan kind of definition of rock and roll, the Keith Richards definition of rock and roll, the ability to play, to have a straight eighth, to get kind of nerdy with musicians, the straight eighths versus the dotted eighths or triplet feel. When those things cross, that's rock and roll.
Awesome.
And the New Orleans influence of all that is playing sort of in between straight and shuffling. And, that's what they call down there playing in the crack. And that's that in between area that it's not, it's not machine like time, but it has a wave to it. It has a swing to it. And that is what a lot of modern music does not have, because it's heavily quantized and on the grid.
Right.
But my approach is that kind of loose, swinging rock and roll feel that
Bill, that you bring the human element, man, to the sound of the drums. That's it.
I even wanted to say too, to that same point, is like, it's something you may be able to coach, but not guarantee is going to get there. It's like not something you could definitely teach somebody. You have to be somewhat gifted naturally to do what you're doing.
Well, yeah, it's a feel thing, just like so many things in music, and there's other things in life. Sports, a lot of the time, is like that. It's a feel thing. You can't. You can teach a lot of technical aspects of drumming, technique and hand positions and how to move the stick and whatnot. But that feel is something that you have to develop on your own through listening. And I always think that, the biggest asset a musician can have is a great pair of ears.
Totally.
That's more important than great hands or, fast fingers or whatever. If you have a great pair of ears, you're going to go far. And that's where the epitome of that for me was always what Ringo was doing on the right hand, on the hi-hat. And that's what he did.
Yeah. And one of our listeners tuned in and basically said that part of the reason for that with Ringo was he was left-handed, but on a right-handed kit.
Right. Well, that's what he says. He was a lefty playing a right-handed kit. So that's why all the fills would be, things that we'd normally lead with the right hand. He's leading with the left hand. It gives it a strange feel. And he works up the toms instead of down the toms. So there's different orchestrations involved that most right-handed drummers wouldn't do.
Yeah. Well, thank you to Mario for that little tidbit. That's excellent. And Joey, so you also start at 3, correct? Like as far as playing music?
Pretty much. And actually, I started wanting to be a drummer. I guess everybody wants to start off as a drummer when you're a kid. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
especially
just want to bang
you know,
on things. Yeah.
I'm already like breaking everything and hitting everything, so it just all of a sudden turned into rhythm. But that was more about pots and pans at 3. But by 7, I think it was either 6 or 7 for Christmas. I got a drum set, and yeah, there was a lot of monkeys going on without a doubt. But
and then you got the drum set, and your family was like, "We should have gotten him a very quiet thing."
Yeah.
it lasted about 2 years, and then all of a sudden one day it was gone. But you know, whatever, that happened. It got me going. I was already though kind of, you know, just like Phil, except for a little different. I was not just focused on the Monkees and the Beatles, but those were big, obviously. But
Sure.
I was fortunate enough to be given a stack of records. I mean, in my mind, it's 100 records, but I bet it was like 20. You know, looking back. But it was a great assortment. At that time, they were older records. They were all kind of like 60s records, but they were, you know, Beatles, Animals, you know, Monkees, all that stuff. The same year I got the drum set, I got a Monkees record too. So
Nice.
You know, that was good. But yeah, but then later I basically got sucked back into wanting to play, and a couple friends of mine had a little thing going on. One guy was playing guitar, one guy was playing drums, and I was 13. At that point, it was like, oh my God, I've got to get back into this. You know, it just kind of hit me. And I said, how do I get in? And they said, we need a bass player. And I'm all, what the hell is it? And they sort of tell me, and, you know, I go basically start taking lessons, and the rest is what the rest is.
Yeah, the first half of the history.
Yeah.
And then Phil, I also saw there that basically by the age of 16, you're already performing regularly in the clubs of LA.
I was, yeah. I basically was in my first band when I was 13. We were called the Suspenders. We all wore black and white suspenders. That was the vibe. And
genius.
Yeah, great marketing.
We had a gimmick, and we went with it.
It started in backyard parties and whatnot. But by the time I was 16, I was in a band with some guys that were a bit older. Yeah, it was. We used to play the Blah Blah Cafe down on Ventura Boulevard.
Oh yeah,
that's an old timey club.
Yep. Sure.
Doesn't exist anymore. And then that led to being on the road when I was 18. A guy from that band ended up getting into this thing that was called Starfire, a 7-piece show band. There aren't too many of these around anymore, but this was in those days. There were hotel lounges,
right?
This kind of thing, tuxedo gig, and getting out on the road with 4 singer dancers who used to work at an amusement park up front, and then a 3-man backing band in a hotel lounge at the Quality Inn in Bellevue, Nebraska was the first gig, and we played a history of popular music show, right? These medleys from the 40s, the big band era, starting with Glenn Miller, all the way up through, I think Maniac might have been the closer, something like that.
Which would have been an absolute showstopper at the time.
Yeah. So that was right out of high school, and I found a love for the road at a very early age.
That's awesome.
That's kind of where I learned how to play guitar too, because I had a lot of downtime. So it was an acoustic guitar as one of the pieces of gear, and I would grab that thing, and I had a Simon and Garfunkel songbook, and I taught I learned some chords. Not that I play guitar, but I do know a few chords, and I can write songs on it. So that's where that came from, was having that downtime. It was either watching General Hospital or playing the acoustic guitar. I did
or both.
General Hospital.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I used to love it.
That's awesome.
I have a small General Hospital connection, but we won't go there.
That'll be for a different episode.
Yeah. I just wanted to before it disappears here, were there scripts for each video? And did we give the director? Yes, there were scripts. They provided the scripts. We did interact with them, and we kind of changed, especially Hey Vominos, we made some big changes. But these guys are amazing. They're artists, honestly, is what it was. So we felt we were in great hands. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Well, and so this same time frame for you, so 16 to 20s or what have you, somewhere in there, you meet Michael Gurley at that point. Is that correct?
We went to the same school, but we were never like friends in school.
Sure.
We were like, I think a year or so apart. It must have been a year. You know, 1 year in high school.
It's an eternity.
You know, exactly.
Right.
It's like, no,
you're not cool. They are cool. Yeah.
At 100%.
Yep.
And, I heard about him. I heard about his, you know, there was only a couple bands at school. And honestly, I was in the best one, not because I was in it, but because we had an amazing guitar player, this guy named Jim Phillips, who he's one of these guys that like, he sounded like Jimmy Page when he was 13. I mean, awesome. You know, especially to us back then. You know what I mean?
Now in the
but
memory,
he's one of those guys,
decades later.
Exactly. I mean, you know, but he's one of those guys that was just good, and he was by far the best guitar player. And even Mike Gurley will tell you this, that Mike was more of a rhythm guitar player back then. And plus, Mike, you know how I didn't know Mike really as a musician. I knew him as a surfer. He was part of this kind of surfer group, and I have no physical talents like that. I was all about music and, you know, smoking pot. But the way it all kind of went down is we just, you know, you would just play, you got better, and one of the guys in the band wasn't keeping up with the other two guys, and so you got somebody better, and we just climbed the ladder till all of a sudden one day I'm in a van driving to LA when I'm 20. You know, so I've been in a band since I was 14, essentially.
That's awesome.
You know?
And then, if you don't mind, I love this story. It's basically how now you guys all meet. Is you're working for Geffen Records, I believe, in the mailroom.
Yes, that's right.
And please tell the part too where like you refused to take any promotions because you didn't want to like fall into the trap of now working for a record company. And then, Phil, if you could come in during that, like basically you're dating someone at Geffen Records who introduces you. But anyway, this is such a cool moment of like, you know, the origin story here.
For Phil's sake, I'm going to compact this because he's heard this too many times and he knows I can just go. But essentially, me and Mike start this band at this point. We're kind of a duo. We want to focus on songwriting. We don't want to we're tired of being in bands that can't write a damn song, you know? Right. So we decided not to just bounce to another band from a band we were in that broke up, because musicians are very, you know, they need to be in a band or they feel like they're not doing something. Right. So we just spent, I used to say a year, but now I think it was really more like 8 months, 8 or 9 months. We just wrote. But then we decided, hey, we don't want to be a duo. We want to rock out. So we need a drummer. We started playing with every drummer I could find. I mean, all the recycler, however you find a drummer back then, you just did it. Yep. That was an LA magazine that
flyers in music stores.
All that stuff. So
early Craigslist.
It was honestly, it's hard to put a band together.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody knows that, who has never done it. It's really hard.
It's hard. Hard to keep a band
I
together.
was kind of at my wit's end, and one day, I think I just said it out loud in the mailroom, and just said, "Does anybody know a drummer in this town?" And this woman named Leslie, she was. In my mind, I always pictured her. She's one of these people that like. She moves very purposefully and very calmly, no matter how crazy it all is around her. She stopped, turned, and looked at me and just said, "I know the best drummer in LA." I was just like, "What? Well, give me his damn number, would you?" And so I called Phil, and to be honest, Phil was kind of like, who is this?
Let me jump in now, because with this Leslie, because her assessment of my ability was a little bit influenced by other factors. Let's best drummer in LA. I mean, at the time there was Jeff Porcaro was here playing. Vinny Colaiuta was in LA. I mean, maybe
not Nope.
So there were a lot of great drummers in LA, but
People can fill in the blanks on what the other influences were.
We were enjoying each other's company. She was older than me and was giving me a good education on certain things. And she was, we were having a good old time. And she passed my name to Joey. And then I got a phone call from him, at which point I think the conversation, if I recall, we did talk about music that we did resonate on music that we liked, but there was something about the whole vibe, because I was a little bit standoffish and he was very full of himself. So I think we went this way a little bit in regards to that, because it wasn't like an instant love connection, but yet there was something about what was going on there that was intriguing. And I don't know I can't remember if you, I doubt it. I don't think in those days you sent music to anybody. It was basically like, you want to come and jam with my band, or you want to come and sit in, or whatever. There's no like, let me send you a tape or something. It was just like,
demo,
want to do this? I was like, yeah, all right, I'll do it. So we got together at a rehearsal studio in Hollywood called Cole Rehearsal. That actually figures pretty big in my life, because not only did I auditioned for Dada at Cole Rehearsal, I also auditioned for Blue Man Group at Cole Rehearsal several years later. But we met there in Hollywood, and at the time, I had already got my career going. I was a signed songwriter with a publishing deal at Warner Chappell Music. Mm-hmm. And I had a partner. I had my own partner, a guy that I went to high school with. So I was writing with this guy, and I was involved in a situation that doesn't even exist anymore today, I don't think. In those days, and we're talking about late 80s going into the early 90s, they would sign people to development kind of publishing deals where, me and my partner, we were able to have a publishing contract where our delivery requirement was like 10 tracks a year. Mm-hmm. And they would give us, there was a little demo studio at Warner Chappell that we could go into in the evening and basically learn how to record. That was like college. I had already come off the road from the live thing in the bars and whatnot. Now we were in the studio kind of figuring that out. Right. And, the idea was you're going to get a cut on somebody's, like they're going to send a song to Whitney Houston or something.
Right.
That never happened. They kept picking up my option. It's like,
you didn't write, I want to dance with somebody?
I
thought that was yours.
You'd get like, $15,000 for the year. And in those days you could live on that in Los Angeles, if you maybe had a little part-time job or something. But this was a magic time where you're getting paid to make these demos. And then this guy calls up and says, come jam with my band. And I'm like, all right. And I go down there and I get in a room with him and Mike, and I'm like, uh-oh, these guys are like way better than what I've got going. They had something, going. They had that harmony. Mike was a kind of a stunning guitar player.
Sure. Yeah.
Joey had this, he was a rock and roller with real rock and roll energy. Whereas my partner was this nerdy kid that I went to high school with. I knew I had that, but my partner didn't. Somehow we found our way into this publishing deal. But now I'm looking at these guys going, this is something at another level up. Yeah. However, I was a songwriter, and it's a hard nut to crack when you join a band as the third guy when you've got a pair wanting to be Lennon McCartney already going. So that was always a thing in our band. But it was undeniable at the time that they were super good at what they were doing. And from a playing perspective, I loved the music and what I could do in it and what I could bring to the thing. So after some prodding and pushing and pulling, we ended up together.
Yeah.
The reason why I was so freaked out on the phone is because at that point, me and Mike had just started to get like something that had never happened before in my life. Traction. Mm-hmm. Things were starting to go in a direction. It hadn't happened yet, but we had I had actually sat in a room with like a publisher and stuff like that. And we were getting close to this meeting with Miles Copeland and all this stuff. So I was panicked. on the phone probably with Phil at that point.
And it came across as bravado.
Yeah.
Well, there was that.
Yeah, but so you guys formed Dada. I'm wearing the shirt today.
There it is.
There we go.
It's vintage.
It is. And I was a huge.
My piece of swag on because
there you go.
Yeah,
it is opening day, so there you go. You got some Dodgers flair going on. But so yeah, you create this, and I'm probably skipping over some things from how it gets there. But you put together the album Puzzle. It has a intergalactic hit of Disneyland, and like for me, it comes out at a time that I'm a freshman in college, and we love that song. And it, almost like what we were talking about there, like another difference was it wasn't streaming. You don't buy a single, you get the whole CD. So we knew that you weren't a one-hit wonder because we're obviously playing the entire album and loving pretty much every track on it and playing it all the time. And so it's a formative, foundational album for me and my friends, my college buddies. Is Dada's Puzzle album.
I love hearing that.
As far as albums go, I mean, we haven't changed from the approach. I mean, we paid a lot of attention in those days to making albums, and that has not changed at all for Joey and I. We make albums. I mean, we've put out a lot of singles as 7Horse too, but every 7Horse album has been made with the intention that people will sit down and listen to it.
Listen to the whole thing.
Right. Absolutely. On a great pair of speakers.
10 songs that go together.
Yeah, that's how we like to listen to. I mean, we have a great appreciation for records and albums. And, even though the market has changed and, people don't buy them anymore, et cetera, so what?
Yeah.
That's not what, we're interested in. We still like the art form. That's what we make.
Totally. So I'm going to actually bring in. Go ahead, Joey.
I was just going to say, it's just about how you are being influenced in your musical world, and that's just that's our influence. It's like we can't help it. So why should you change it if that's kind of where your mojo lies?
Sure, and it's clearly working. We're going to obviously get into that, but. So on the off chance that somebody has not heard the song Disneyland, or if you are listening and maybe you'll hear it and remember, oh, that's that. Here is that, and we're gonna let it play for a little bit, and then I'll kind of bring down the volume and we can kind of talk over it because there's some things I want to touch on. So here's Disneyland by Dada. There's my guitarist. There's Phil with hair.
That's right. Thank you for pointing that out.
But even back to the point about look, it's very interesting drumming. It's distinct and different, and Joey being a rock star.
Well, the other big influence on me at that time, in particular, as I came into Dada, was Stuart Copeland. Stuart Copeland was huge for me. The next big drummer for me after Ringo was Stuart Copeland, and very unique approach and. And that influenced, certainly in my playing on that record, if you really dig into it, you can hear a lot of Copelandisms. I don't know if on Disneyland is the best example, but they're on there, that's for sure.
Oh,
I think Stuart Copeland's on that list of almost every drummer in some capacity because of his unique approach to how, especially with his Middle Eastern influence from where he's brought up, where he drops beats and things like that into where the downbeats fall and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, and for the younger listeners, they were flipping off the first President George on this sound.
Right.
Just happened to work out that it just, later.
It could, a decade later, you could do it again.
People took it up. It's like, hey, all right.
So there is another song. I don't want to cut this off because Michael does have a wonderful a solo later on. But again, people probably know that song.
I wrote that song in my sleep, by the way. I should say that song came to me in my sleep. I got the melody, the actual melody, da 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 da, and the word Disneyland was on a bus driving by. I woke up like 4 or 5 in the morning. Sure. I wrote down 10 or 12 lines, I just robbed a grocery store. Now I'm going to Disneyland. Anything that was just kind of absurd and witty and juxtaposed. Went back to sleep. Got back up, kind of started writing more lyrics, and I got on the phone with Mike. went to his house that day, and he had the you know, the kind of Led Zeppelin part.
Yep.
That happens, and boom, there it was.
You know, this is my theory that Joey he has this is one of his great knacks in songwriting, is this ability to take sort of pop culture things and spin them, you know, and that's how we get to Meth Lab's Zoso sticker, because that's his thing as well, based off of, you know, watching Breaking Bad and other things, and sort of putting these weird things together, and Hippies on Acid in a certain ways like that. You know, this is a way that he you know, approaches when we get these kind of titles or lines. Those are usually coming from him.
That's so cool.
I'm about to start crying from that. I love it when you say that. That's like, yes.
So I know we're you know, I don't want to go too long here because there's so much more to get to, but I do want to let Some of Moon play. It's the last track on the album, and this is for a live performance, I think from Seattle. Anyway, this song it was one of our absolute favorites. It would come on, and it's just this anthem that you all want to sing to when you're either under the influence of something. And it's a beautiful song. So we're going to bring it in here, and then hopefully you guys can share some more about it.
This is the best night of the tour. There's no doubt about that.
I'm going to move it forward a little bit. Another political commentary is your T-shirt on this night. You're wearing the "Impeach the MFer already" T-shirt, but this song is, if you don't mind, share a little bit about what kind of the inspiration behind the song was.
That song, you know, honestly, at that point, I was as I was talking about before, me and Mike made this critical decision. Honestly, probably one of the best, you know, right up there with calling Phil, decisions that I ever made. It was just to not start another band with Mike Gurley. It was to learn how to write songs with Mike Gurley. And I just started doing, you know, like, how do you do that? What do? You listen to a lot of music, but I wanted to, I mean, I felt like I'd been writing lyrics since I was 14, but they were all about like some girl at high school or whatever. You know, it just, I couldn't quite figure it out. I just actually, a girl that I wanted to date but never did, but was friendly with, she got me into reading like classic novels, and it just, something exploded on me on that, because I started, it connected. It was like, oh, hey, here's some gas for your lyric content. And essentially it put me in the mind of, hey, I don't have to tell the truth all the time. It doesn't have to be about me, everything and some kind of true story that I'm recreating or vaguely putting together. And sometimes it is that, but I started to get into just the, you know, spinning a tale. And I really liked writers that were, I mean, for lack of a better word, kind of psychedelic in their use of, you know, putting words together. And it just started working. That song, I had a completely different music for it. And it's basically about a person that made all the wrong choices in life. They basically just went for money. And now they're, you know, at this point where it's like, what the hell what the hell's going on? And it just happens to be the end of the world is coming.
Sure.
And they're kind of looking at it just going, wow, that was dumb. If, you know, that's sort of where I was coming from. I played it for Mike, and he goes, hey, I love those lyrics, but I got some different music for you, just to consider. And as soon as he played it for me, it was like, I'm honestly, I couldn't tell you what the other music sounded like, but it didn't sound like that. It was just so obvious, like, oh, boom, there it is. It was a chocolate peanut butter moment.
And it's this beautiful, I love songs that build, like it starts out as just guitar, then the vocals, then the drums come in, and it builds to this moment here. Let's let this play a little bit, and then we'll come back. gives me chills. Great vocals too, obviously, Joey. Excellent vocals.
Thank you.
And here you get a little Michael solo too. I mean, Philly, I know I've heard you talk about this, like, and this will help us transition. We do need to spend a little bit of time in how Dada kind of like, it's almost like a crash then a phoenix where 7Horse comes out of.
Mm-hmm.
But you were talking about how Michael was he's trained in a certain style that kept you in that pocket, and by removing that, it allowed you guys to kind of go in ways that you never would have if he had remained with the band.
You're talking about the transition from Dada to 7Horse.
To 7Horse, yeah.
I mean, 7Horse has flipped everything on its head here from what we have here on the screen at the moment. Now, there's Mike Gurley playing slide, but Joey plays slide in 7Horse. Yep. A completely different approach.
Sure.
A much more rhythmic approach, because as a bass player, I think it's a different feel on the guitar, the essence of what he and I do together certainly was born in this band, and this is an agreement about rhythm and an approach to how rhythm is laid out, and that has become what we do in 7Horse, except instead of him on the bass, it's the guitar and drums locking together.
Sure.
I've always been kind of a guy who plays off of guitar players more so than bass players to begin with. And the sound that we make, and somebody just put up 7Horse, a great fan of ours put up 7Horse has a sound, and she's right. And that's the sound that he and I make together with him on guitar and me on the drums, and a lot of times me singing. It's a completely different approach. It's a different attitude. It's a different feel. But the thing was born in Dada. It makes so much sense to me to be playing with him as a guitar player, because that's kind of what I always key off of anyway. And he's a great rhythm player. Mm-hmm. Because of where he comes from on bass.
On bass, of course, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's like,
sure,
that was never Mike's thing in Dada. He was not a great rhythm player. He's a lead player.
Yep.
And Joey and I held the fort down. So he would have a landscape on which to do whatever he wanted to do, and basically wander around, and he had total freedom to do whatever he wanted. And we kept the train on the tracks.
Sure.
This thing is different in that the train doesn't go off the tracks here. Because we are the fucking tracks.
You are the tracks, yeah. I was gonna say,
and so it's different. It's a much more focused. Our songs are not as free. We don't jam. We don't.
Right.
Although we could, but we've made a choice to keep it more structured and to make it more about more nuggety kind of songwriting.
Before we fully jump to 7Horse, I kind of want to just tie a bow on Dada, because you were on IRS Records. They go out of business. You get signed to MCA. The president comes over, personally brings you over, but you get one album. It doesn't sell, and it's over. And it's I'm sure it was like it was just like this giant trip that sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically the end of the road for a lot of things coming up. MCA, which musicians have long referred to as the music cemetery of America.
Yes, that's what the initials are.
Yeah, and they certainly put a headstone on our career. It was. I mean, I speak for myself. It was a devastating time. My entire life fell apart basically coming out of that.
Yeah, I wanted to say I've way oversimplified that because there's way more nuance to it all. I know just
throw in getting divorced and going bankrupt on top of losing a record deal, and just kind of like what just happened? What just happened to my life?
I think there's even one other like humbling moment that you shared that I listened to one time, where your job that you got was like to deliver things, and your first delivery was to MCA.
Yeah, I literally got a call from, we had a business manager. We had it all, the whole big structure of what you get in the music business we had at that time, including a business manager whose job it is to pay your bills while you're out on the road touring and sort of manage your finances. Somehow I went bankrupt while having a business manager. So I get a call from this guy who says, "You're broke." I mean, and not Hollywood broke, like really broke. Like you don't have any money, broke.
North Hollywood broke.
North Hollywood, yeah, exactly. North, you got that apartment in Malibu immediately, and you need a job. And I know a guy who will put you on. So call this number, which I did. Turns out it's speedy delivery service in Burbank. Go down there, get the shirt. First job, go to the Black Tower at MCA and pick up this. I come off the elevator, and there's the receptionist who just weeks before I would see coming in there as a signed artist on the label. And, she's like, "Hi." Oh, it's like those. And yeah, my last delivery of the day and my last delivery ever, because that was a one-day job. I realized at that point, I cannot do this.
Right.
Was going to legendary record producer David Foster's house, which it was, I don't know if he still lives there, it was back in Malibu and was an edifice that looked like it was just like a monolithic structure, it looked like a hotel. There was this guy's house, and I wound up this big long driveway to deliver these CDs, and there is a warm light emanating from inside, and it's the studio, and music is leaking from the studio. And I look in, and there's David Foster at the console, and the great bass player Nathan East is sitting next, cutting a track. And I'm standing on the outside like a kid pressed up. What happened? How did I end up out here? And at that point, I was just like, no, I can't do this. And it was very shortly thereafter that I flipped open the LA Weekly, and there was an ad for a Blue Man Group.
Blue Man Group. Yeah, I was going to say. So you go on to do the Blue Man Group in Vegas, which is even where you grew up, yes?
Correct. I was born there.
So you go back to Vegas and start doing the Blue Man Group. And Joey, you kind of go through a time frame there where you're like, you need a break, and you go to Seattle, correct?
Yeah, I moved to Seattle. I just had my second kid.
Never came back.
It's kind of crazy. Although some days it seems like I do live in LA. I mean, I'm down there all the time. But I moved to Seattle for a myriad of reasons. It just was the right move for me at the time. And I needed to do a couple different things with my life at that point after the I love how you were describing what I tripped and exploded or whatever you said. Yes, everything just blew up in our face.
Right.
But, so I wanted to do some different music, and I had this idea for this book that I was writing, and I wanted to finish it. And by the way, Laura K. Martin for president. That's my new. I'm getting that T-shirt. She was asking.
If you have a book.
She's amazing. She was asking me about the book, and I'm gonna put it out in a hardback because I don't think anybody cares about digital. I'm gonna put it out in a regular either paperback or hardback in the near future, and I'm writing a second book right now. But
nice.
Anyways, yeah, it was just one of those. Honestly, you can kind of put this under the big heading of life. I mean, it just stuff happens in life.
Sure.
And for me and Phil, it was kind of like, okay, maybe all this stuff happened, but hey, somehow there was like a rudder and gutters and, things to like put it all, whoop back, back into the machine. We got back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I guess this is a cool part too, is Dada goes through a 25th anniversary. Well, I guess we're not there yet. You're going to try and do another Dada record, and you have studio time. And Michael doesn't show up or doesn't want to show up.
Right.
And you're like, well, we already have this time. So Joey kind of says, well, I've been messing around with the guitar. Why don't you sing and let's just see what happens? And you go into the studio. And I think this is amazing. So like to set that up for a moment, and then we're going to definitely be able to talk about it. Joey, you're like, hey, I've been working on this lick, and it's this. lay down Meth Lab Zozo sticker that day, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
well, I mean, just briefly, the whole thing starts with an iPhone message. I mean, that's where, you know, we're in different towns, so
Right.
we're going to start writing songs. It's going to be long distance. So he, you know, we're kicking around some ideas. We're talking about the blues. I'm listening to a lot of blues, Muddy Waters. You know, we're getting into it. We've been seeing what the Black Keys and the White Stripes have done. We're thinking about being a duo. We see a lane for us to go down. The blues is the entry point. He sends me this riff that's labeled a Meth Lab Zozo sticker. I get this thing, it's the guitar riff. I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that before. And I'm like, what's with this title? You know, and little did I know that, you know, it could have been just like what I had for breakfast. It was just a marker.
Yeah.
That was what he sent to remember the riff by. But I saw that, and I saw something in that.
For sure.
You know, I'm gonna write a lyric around. I got a Meth Lab. So what is a Meth Lab Zozo sticker? I don't know, but what if it's rolled up in my pocket? What does that mean to me? And you know, I had been listening to Muddy Waters sing about, you know, Mannish Boy, and getting that attitude of what a blues man, a Chicago blues man out of, you know, Delta has to say when he rolls into town, and that sort of bravado and that sexuality that is part of it that I thought went well with that riff. And you know, he said, "Are you sure you want to write a song that's only about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I do."
That's amazing.
So you know, that's where that thing came from. And yeah, the first day in the studio with our friend Scott Gordon, you're right. We had this time that you know, we were trying like hell to make a Dada record. You know, we had played some shows during the early 2000s. We had busted our ass to get the band back out on the road. You know, I did some time. I filled in with the Gin Blossoms for a while after I came back to Las Vegas, and I saw what those guys were doing, and I was like, well, you know, geez, if they, I mean, they were bigger than we were. They had multiple platinum hits, but still, the 90s, you know, if they want the 90s, that's us, and we could go out and do it, and we did. You know, we toured 2003, 2004. We put out How to Be Found. 2005, 6, 7, maybe we were out, but it was always a struggle getting that band out on its feet and doing stuff. And we, you know, and we wanted to create new music, and we had been writing a record in 2010 and had made some progress. But man, we could not get Mike Gurley into the studio to actually do this thing. He was doing other things. And finally it got so to the point where it was like, we don't know, you know, we can't do it. It just isn't going to happen. And our friend Scott Gordon said, and you know, and that's the way it is in a band. It's like, if you don't have if you're a 3-person band and you don't have all 3 people going in the same direction,
all in,
right, it ain't happening.
Right.
So, it wasn't Chicago.
right.
Like, you know.
And I think there's this moment too. So obviously you write this 7-Horse music. There's this, I wish I'd caught this back when it was happening. You do a 25th anniversary tour of Dada with 7-Horse opening, which I just think is this.
Well, actually the 20th. We went out in 2012.
20th, sorry.
So you know, we had put out, we put out first day in the studio, we cut Meth Lab Zozo sticker. We got that record out. We started promoting it. You know, I sent it to an old radio promotion guy who worked on Disneyland. And he said, "Hey, I think you guys might have something here. You know, I could run with this to the radio." And we said, "Okay, go for it." And he got some traction on Low Fuel Drug Run.
Yeah, that's a great song too.
You know, on that track, but we couldn't get anywhere really with Meth Lab Zozo sticker or the radio. It might have been a little too edgy for
at that time, possibly. Not now.
No, but we did go out in 2020 for a 20th anniversary song, 20th anniversary tour, and we went out there and opened for ourselves.
That goes back to what I was saying about me and Phil. We have to do 5 days in one day at all.
Two, you know? It's a great maximizing revenue too, right there.
Most people, exactly. It was the right way to maximize the opportunity and the revenue. And the strange thing was, a lot of our hardcore fans didn't know it was us.
That's so great.
They had no idea who 7Horse
love
was,
that.
and they came out
I
there
love that.
wearing a top hat. You know, they didn't expect us to look like that or to sound.
And the sound is different enough. Yeah.
And and afterwards they're like, I didn't even know that was you guys. So that was the last time we did that, though. That was a lot of work.
I'm sure.
Exhausting.
And you were like a DIY. You booked that whole tour yourself, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was part of the reason why it ends too, because there wasn't enough, taking it seriously on the other side. Anyway, we'll leave that out. But basically, at that point, it becomes where it's just going to be 7Horse going forward.
Yeah, and then we got the good fortune of getting that email from Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, which must be like a mind-blowing, bonkers moment of like, holy crap, Martin Scorsese wants to use our song, and it's the edgy one. Like it's the one where you're like,
of course, of course, it's perfect for him.
It was definitely something that was unforgettable, and still is. Still
don't know where he heard it or how he found it, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we never found out the real story behind that. I mean, there's so many theories on how it could have. We did have it. We did get it. We did get some play on satellite radio. A guy named Mike Marone was playing it on his show on the old Loft channel on Sirius.
Oh,
so they may have heard it. Somebody may have heard it there. A lot of times music editors on films will drop in temp tracks, and while they're cutting the film. And then the director likes it, and the song stays in the movie, and that could have been what happened, but we never did find out.
I'll try to make this quick. My two favorite moments of the moment for Meth Lab is number one, getting an email while waiting in line at Costco from Scorsese's lawyer, essentially, who's doing all the clearing for the music. And says, Martin Scorsese, Meth Lab, Zosa sticker, Wolf of Wall Street. I shoot it to Phil because I don't live in LA anymore. I'm not seeing Variety magazine and, the Reporter and all that, the Hollywood Reporter. So I don't know what the next Scorsese movie is. I think it's a scam. I send it to Phil. I go, is this real? He gets right back to me. He goes, yes, it's real. Find out who this is, whatever. And the woman told me, she goes, look, Scorsese cuts his movies to music. Right now, I can tell you this. Your song is in this movie for 13 and a half minutes. So we're going to license 13 and a half minutes. But I can't promise you're going to get 1 second when he's done. And it's
with the editing,
So fast forward to my next favorite moment. Me and Phil on tour with Dada. And that was the one. That was the tour. That was the tour. So here's something else. We're opening for ourselves. Dada has a couple of days off. Me and Phil take a train from Chicago to
just to
Milwaukee. And for 2 days, we finish up the tracks for our second 7Horse record. That night, the second night, we go out. I have maybe 3 drinks. Phil had more. That's all I'm going to say. And
something greater than 3.
Greater than 3. And the next morning, while we're waiting for it, we decide we have to catch. I think we had to go to St. Louis to catch the bus to get back on the tour. Phil looks. It's one of the worst times I've ever seen Phil. He was there was no color. It was the worst hangover I've ever seen. I was kind of worried, oh my god. Right. Then I get this text from my little brother, who says, "Hey, I just saw a trailer on YouTube for the movie Wolf of Wall Street. Are you going to sue Martin Scorsese?" That's literally what he says. And I don't say anything to Phil. Right. Because it's my brother and I love my brother, but I want to make sure, it's correct. So I kind of and boom, it pops up and I just went, oh my God, Phil. And you've never seen a transformation in a human being. I mean, ever.
That is so we now know how to cure a hangover. It's to get Martin Scorsese to use your music.
He was doing that thing where you kick up your heels and, it was
it's on the Alka-Seltzer box, very small. On what works.
He did a jig.
Yeah, hey, now listen, guys. I got to jump in here for a second, and I want to apologize. I'm going to have to get off this call.
Sure, no worries.
I apologize to everybody. I wish I could hang around. I'm going to have to let Joey talk about all my genius lyrics that I've written in this band and all my songwriting, because we spent all the time talking about Moon and Disneyland. But he's going to have to cover that for you. But I know he'll do a great job.
We should have done it in reverse.
We should.
The one that I wanted to just share with you on here, and we can just leave it to people to go check it out, is you do have a song that's, I think, very deep and meaningful, Two-Stroke Machine. And it's about you and your father, and it wasn't the easiest when you were younger, but you're still in touch. He's even in the video. That I just think if you had 2 seconds to share something about that.
Yeah, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a song about, unlike Joey, I tend to write, I do kind of write literal things from my life. I turn them around. I mean, he does too at times, but I've always been somebody that I got to live it and then I'll write about it. And this is a story that goes back to when I was about 8. Growing up in Las Vegas, it was a wild way to grow up. My dad worked nights in casinos and succumbed to a lot of the temptation in Las Vegas, which I also had to face when I was out there doing Blue Man. But this was a bad night in the house that I wrote about, but it is a redemption story. Although at the time, it starts with the line, my dad pulled a gun on my granddad one day. And that's a true story. I was in the house when that happened. So, it was a pretty scary incident, but all through the years, there was a lot of unresolved issues between my father and I, but it was always a work in progress. And we tried to keep the relationship together. And I always had an aspirational look at what it could be. And that was kind of the song, culminates with this idea that fences have been made. It says, could have held it all against him, would have been justified, but you've only one daddy, you've only one life. And that's true. And I found out firsthand a couple of years ago when he passed. And I'm glad that I stuck in there and we were able to get that kind of come to an understanding between us and a forgiveness about what went on in the past, and accept each other, and and for me, able to get past that before he died was very important. So there's a lot of that kind of thing in the lyrics that I write.
Your dad was a fucking one of your biggest fans, by the way.
He was.
He loved seeing you play.
He did. Absolutely. My mother too. I mean, they were both. My mom is still there. She comes to all the gigs. My dad came as long as he could. He came on a walker. He came on oxygen. He was in the video on oxygen. So they were both. And my mother continues to be very supportive. But that song too. It's interesting that you brought that up, because I got an email last night from somebody in China who mentioned that song and what it meant to that person, along with other music that we've made in 7Horse. I don't know who that is, but getting that kind of an email is kind of the most gratifying thing that can happen for a songwriter, for a musician, to hear from somebody who's been moved like that.
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted you to tell it too, because we do find that there's people, like, whether the music is about something like that or surviving cancer, whatever, like we always want people to share those things, because it is such a helpful moment for someone out there who maybe feels alone and then doesn't feel so alone, because they get to connect with that in a way that was very important at that time. So thank you for sharing this story.
Of course. All right, you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally get it. Understand, and thank you so much for joining.
I'm just going to take you the rest of the way home and tell you.
That's right.
The tremendous story of 7Horse.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for the time.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
See everybody.
So, Joey, why don't we spend a little bit of a moment talking a little bit more about the guitar? Some people were asking about that. It to me sounds very Zeppelin, When the Levee Breaks, kind of blues, rock and roll. But if you don't mind, share a little bit more about, like, kind of what your influences were and how you made that transition from bass to guitar.
Well, actually, and I love your references there. My ego thanks you. I actually started playing guitar at the same time I was playing bass, because when I was 13, and I got a bass. My younger brother, the one who I was referring to before,
he wanted you to sue Martin Scorsese.
Yes, that guy. Since I got a bass, he wanted a guitar. So and my thing was, I was like dead serious about this. It was like, I wanted a bass, but I also wanted to take lessons like right away. Like, no joke, I need to get good right now.
Right. I've already got the gig. I need to be able to play
I've got the
right
gig.
now.
And the thing is, one of the other two guys, he's playing drums, so I can't be that guy, So it's like, okay, now, so I've got to figure this out. Well, my brother Vince, my little brother Vince, he gets a guitar, and I think he takes one lesson, and that's it. He's out. So all of a sudden, there's this Fender. I mean, it was actually a really nice guitar. It's a Fender Music Master. Wow. No, it was a Jazz Master, and which is like, God, I wish I had that guitar right now. And a book of chords. So while I was taking lessons on bass, and I kind of my program for me was like, as soon as I felt like I ran out, of stuff to learn from one guy, I'd go find the next guy. I mean, I just kept going up the ladder until I was taking lessons from like this stand-up bass playing master guy from a stand-up bass playing book. And I learned all this stuff, just to add into the mix. But I did have this guitar and a book of chords. So I just taught myself how to play, basic chords. And that was the beginning of my songwriting, because honestly, I mean, I have written songs on bass. There's no doubt about it. And I've written, bass. It's almost like if you're going to write a song on bass, for me, it's because there's a riff involved, that you're playing on bass, right? But
it's McCartney's writing school book for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to put myself in that world. But
he was a very melodic player, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
he's that kind of thing.
He's an amazing player. And he's a decent songwriter. So
got a few hits, a few.
Yeah, he did all right for himself. Yeah. And so basically, I kind of had the guitar going, but it was always on this, like, okay, I was getting better and better on bass. Guitar, I knew enough to get myself in trouble, basically, and to start learning how to write songs. However, not great they were, but I was, it was. So fast forward to Dada happens. I've gotten myself to where I can play a bar chord and open chords and blah blah blah. But I think what I was doing a lot back then was just making crap up. Like, you don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, things that sound good. It's like, I don't care if that's in a book or not. I like that,
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was doing a lot of stuff like that. And that kind of worked, I think, for Mike too, because he was coming from like a real schooled, technical guitar playing thing. And I wasn't. And it was another kind of way that we mixed without like just being the same thing. So when it was time, fast forward, we take this break, MCA goes out of business, yada, yada, yada. I need to get out of LA. And I needed to do some stuff on my own. I make my first solo record. Okay. And it was fun. It was very like, it's almost like I wish I could do it again, because I know so much more now, even though I made at that point, I'd done the four Dada records, and some, I'd been in recording. I was really lucky because I'd been in recording studios since I was a kid, because people around me were like going to, those things where you can go and take a course at a recording studio. People, they weren't a musician, but they went to we were on high school together, and for their final or whatever, they got to bring in a band. I mean, that happened to me like at least two or three times. So I was learning how to record in recording studios from way, way, way back. But that's still awesome. Your first solo record, and I had all kinds of time. It was like too much time. I wish I would.
People are actually commenting they'd like you to do another solo.
Well, so here's what happened. After I do the first solo record, because I've done 3 now. After I'd done the first solo record, I kind of realized, hey, man, That was every goddamn chord I know. And I just,
they're all there. You can find them all.
I can't do it again. It's like, if I'm going to do something, I need to get better as a guitar player. So I just started getting like every DVD you can get. It was the very beginning of the internet, like having, people showing you stuff, but it was it was still more about DVDs. And I went back to taking in-person lessons. Like I needed to do something. Right. And the two key things I wanted to learn was, one, I wanted to finger pick, not just strum.
Oh, right.
I wanted to learn how to do some finger picking. So I took lessons to do that. And I wanted to learn how to play slide guitar. So I took lessons from this one guy who was a great slide guitar player, but it just never really, I just couldn't get to where he was. And I could just barely do it. So I just stayed with it. And it was really like 6 months of DVDs, man, just every day. And finally, like one day I got one damn note to sound good. And I guess it's sort of like when you learn how to figure skate or not figure skate, to ice skate, and you're going somewhere, or whatever. Not that I can do that. I can't.
You stop thinking about the balance and you start thinking about going around the corner instead. Like you get past that little bit.
Exactly. So I got to that point, and yes, at that moment in my musical history, I was really digging into the blues and Jimmy Page, which, hey, I was into Led Zeppelin, since I was a kid, but heavily on that Led Zeppelin 3. A lot of acoustic blues and drone notes and different tunings. And it was just like, that was the perfect place for me.
Yep.
And somehow I kind of could do it, and the other thing that helped my whole approach was, when we started 7Horse, we decided to do it just as two at first, no bass player. So I really got into droning notes.
Sure.
And which was a blessing and a curse, because man, when if that's your style, there's no like, cigarette break or whatever. There's no like time to breathe on stage. It's like, nope, if you stop, it stops. Right?
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways,
this E has got a ring the whole time, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
well,
that's sort of what happened.
Yeah. In weaving this back to 7Horse, there's the album "Let the 7Horse Run," which is where Meth Lab Zozo sticker is on, and that's kind of like that first one, right?
Right.
And then there's "Songs for a Voodoo Wedding," "Superfecta," and then the more recent one, "Last Resort." So you guys have
There's another one. That's the third one's called "Living in a Bitch of a World."
Oh, sorry, I missed that one, because that's a great title too.
Right on.
But within there, what stories can you help share there, just from that? You guys are just building off of that momentum of the first one and just not stopping. I mean, like the sound is just incredible throughout the whole thing. I wanted to just give you a moment to kind of share like how that evolves over the years.
Well, when this thing started, honestly, me and Phil had been kind of like threatening to do something, a side project. That had been going on for a while, just because.
Sure.
Just because it wasn't like there was no animus against Mike or anything like that.
No.
And at that point, Mike, was kind of still there. And I think, just to be fair to Mike, I think what was going on for him, and this is in the, the headline of Life, I think he had these kind of aspirations,
Sure.
and, far be it from me. I mean, I have aspirations. We all have aspirations, especially as a musician. And as time goes on, you kind of want to reach for different things that you'd been thinking about. So he was kind of going there, right?
Yeah.
Which meant less time for Dada. And if we're trying to get something done with Dada, like we were saying before, there's only 3, so it's just you can't hide. What the hell was my point? I guess my point was where you're talking about how it all kind of
evolved. Yeah.
Right. So we had talked about it. There was one time when I was at there's a festival in Seattle. They used to have they probably will still have it again at this place called it's not in Seattle. It's in Eastern Washington. This place called the Gorge. It's one of those 3-day festivals. It's called something I'm spacing out on right now, but whatever. I hate concerts. But I was there, and I just saw so many bands. And I called Phil from the show, and it was outdoors. And I said, "God damn it, dude! I mean, we've got to do just something. I mean, we can do something." And that's sort of when that kind of led to there is a half-made Dada record out in the ether somewhere. At that point, when we kind of hit this stall, we were just there. It just kind of had to happen, right?
Sure.
And I remember thinking, now I know why I was tying it back into the solo stuff. I remember thinking, look, if I lead sing this thing, it's going to sound like Dada. It's going to sound like my solo records. It's not going to sound different. And like Phil said before, we wanted to do something completely new. We wanted to flip this thing on its head. So I go, you got to start lead singing.
Yep.
You know, and I think it was sort of like, I don't think he expected me to say that. And it was just sort of, we just went there. And I remember like kind of giving him other singers to listen to, because he has a different range than me. And a different range than Mike. And so I started feeding him like, check out this guy, Iggy Pop. Not that he didn't know who Iggy Pop was, but I just started throwing him guys that were staying low.
Yeah.
And man, the guy just like, woo,
took off.
It was just like, I just like got a match a little too close to gasoline and boom. And that was just like, it was the perfect place for us to live. And he took it, and to Phil's credit, he sort of got into it like I got into guitar. He really took it very serious. I mean, it wasn't a game to us. It was like, hey, we're going to get good at this new, whatever this puzzle is, whatever this new little schism
to me,
is.
I think it reinvigorated some of the newness probably for both of you, because even though you had been doing it for so long, you were now in completely different shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to take a whole different approach. I mean, you literally were working differently.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're rewiring your brain, like, you're still in this world though where you trust each other, and I think that's probably what allowed it to explode, like you shared.
I mean, I think in the end, both of us are still these kids with a drum set and a Monkees record. We really are. I mean, that's kind of who we are.
That's a great way to talk about it. Yeah.
And it just doesn't. We never let it go away. There was no plan B. That was it. So you have to keep. At some point, reinvention's not the worst idea.
No, totally not.
Yeah.
So I want you to set up that track, "Try to Forget It," so that people will because we'll play it after the credits. But I want you to set that up in a second. But that "Songs for a Voodoo Wedding," there were some nuances to that one. Like, you released it on the birthday of like a New Orleans voodoo priestess or something like that.
I think that did happen. I'm not sure if we planned it that way, but I think we might have found out that happened.
That's amazing. So let's just say that you did it on purpose.
Maybe we did. I don't know. Honestly, it's hard to remember, but I do remember Phil. He really did go to a voodoo wedding, and when he came back, and it was a voodoo wedding of a couple of friends of ours. There's this guy who actually I've known longer than Phil, who used to manage the band before Dada that will not be named right now, because we don't have time for that. But I've known, he's an old friend, and so he got married in New Orleans. Phil comes back with all these tales, and we were talking about like what we're gonna call this next record, I think, at that time, and it just like, hey man, Songs for a Voodoo Wedding, come on, this is we're done. That's the name of this record. So
that's awesome. There's lots of good stuff in there too, but we did want to focus on the more recent release, and even just promote some stuff here. So I was going to take a moment to bring up your website, so that you can kind of talk about that. Let's go to the homepage here. The site gets into offering, obviously, newsletters and, the different bio and, ways to listen to the music and purchase stuff and so on. So anything you'd want to specifically promote in here, or anything there's no current shows planned, but I got to think you'll be touring this summer, correct?
It's I mean, hard to predict the future, but something good happened to me and Phil last year. We got a booking agent, which, man, it's so hard to find a good booking agent, and we really like this person. It's just the nature of the game has changed post-COVID. The financing, how it's all done, what it takes to get it done, the perils of going out there and having. I mean, that's probably not happening as much now, or maybe it isn't even happening now anymore, since COVID seems to be under control at this point.
Yeah.
But man, you go out on tour not too long ago, and clubs would go out of business while you were out there.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
It was just we just can't take the hit. I mean, there's
you're not
no record company, to absorb the downfall if that happens.
Yeah,
so,
you're not the first person to mention the financial acrobatics that have to happen to pull off touring right now because of the availability of things like renting the equipment to correct the equipment you need, because it's all been co-opted, or whatever's available is not, things were sold off during COVID and not available anymore. All those kind of, loop-de-loops that have to happen.
It would blow your guys' minds. I mean, you would be like, what? If you see how me and Phil traveled in the band Dada, before even, or actually during the beginning of 7Horse, but, in the 90s, was great. And the 2000s, I mean, we were on some sick buses with a lot of people doing jobs. I mean, there was, back in the 90s when we were signed to either IRS or MCA, I mean, geez, I just had to make sure that I, knew how to get out of the bunk. And
everything else was taken care of.
Yeah, what time sound check was. I mean, it was kind of one of those magical things that no one can take away from us. We had, but you know what? Before, I was just thinking about this. I got to say something.
Yeah,
we have not touched upon kind of the most important thing, honestly, that has happened to me, Phil, and Mike, is the fans and people in general liked us from the beginning. Without that, you got, you're just, and I'm not saying just, there's no shame in that. You're a musician who isn't playing to fans or doesn't have fans, or maybe you're a band that just can't get something going. And believe me, I've been in all those bands. I mean, like I said, I've been in a band since I was 13. It's crazy how hard this is. And we touched on I worked at Geffen. I mean, I was interacting with people like Joe Perry, Jimmy Page. I have a picture of me and Jimmy Page sitting next to each other on my phone right now in the mailroom. I mean, it was crazy, right? But I know so many talented musicians. I really do. Friends of mine who never got anywhere near where the success we had. And it's all because what we put out, fans give us back 100-fold. I mean, that's the magical relationship. That's the fuel. If you don't have that, life is going to kill you. It's going to take you down, because, if you don't have that and you're a musician, no one cares about a musician. They really don't, until they do. But until that moment happens, you're a fraud, you're this, or it's like whatever it is, you're not there yet. So until you're there, man, it's tough. But when Dada started, to cook.
Right.
And I kind of knew that Disneyland song had something about it.
Sure.
There's a lot of stories I could tell you about that. Because the head of, for instance, the head of IRS Records hated that song, wanted it off the record. There was no way in hell he was going to let that song be on the record. And that's a whole nother thing that
so
happened.
wild.
It was actually a great story, but how many stories can I tell in a little amount of time? But
I think what we're going to need is we're going to need a second Dada episode.
That out.
Yeah, we'll need a part 2.
Yeah.
I'm a people person. So when that happened, I mean, that was it. I was a fan with a drum set, and I'm 7 years old. It's that big.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And that's a great way to kind of wrap things up here. I love the fact that you're tying it back to the fans there. And, this was such a, like we were just talking about, I think we need a part 2 of this, and maybe 3, maybe late night version.
By any of the fans that looked pertinent to you guys that.
We've been touching on most of them. Many of them are talking about you doing solo shows in showbiz in Chicago. Many of them saying, get back on the road.
More requests for more books is apparently the
I'm a
more
weekend
books.
drinker because I've got to keep my...
Sure. Yeah, we will definitely do that. We'll do a weekend episode where we can make it kind of get a little more loose, as if it was.
I have daughters. First off, one who lives in LA, she's on the. Right on. One of my daughters is on 4 of the songs on the new record. She's also the girl dance in the Hippies on Acid video. And my editor, who lives in Seattle, she and I are currently together.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Fantastic. Well, Joey, thank you so much, and thank you to Phil in absentia. We had such a blast tonight. Thank you so much for sharing all the stories, and we didn't even get to all of them. We're going to definitely have to do another part 2 of this.
Yeah, anytime, man. I really appreciate you guys having us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. David.
Phillip.
Dada, 7Horse.
We could spend a lot more time talking to them. Just to hear, even at the end where he starts sticking in other things, where he's like, "Oh, by the way, my daughters are in this." It's like, wait a minute, let's dive into that.
Yeah, we didn't even spend any time talking about Blue Man Group. We didn't touch on. Yeah, there was all these cool, fun nuances to things that we definitely could be diving into. So,
well, and we'll get to that when we talked about. We'll have some sort of sequel or something like that.
What we need to do is get them out this way. Perform at Bethlehem or Philly or something.
Somewhere on just an East Coast run would be fantastic. We'll make the effort.
Yes. And then we'll throw on the cameras and have a couple of whiskeys and get to all the fun stories.
Whatever their choice of beverage is. It could be tea, coffee, beer, whiskeys, wine. We'll make it all work.
All right, Phil, let's say goodbye to everybody.
Episode of Your Next Favorite Band, we'd like to sincerely thank Joie Calio and Phil Leavitt of 7Horse, formerly Dada, for sharing all those wonderful stories and allowing us to play their music. We will share tons of links in the show notes here to their websites, their socials, their Spotify, YouTube, Bandcamp, all that good stuff. Please give them a follow, subscribe, and I'm sure they will all appreciate that. As always, our hope here is to bring you your next favorite band. If you tuned in tonight because you were already a huge fan of 7Horse, Dada, Joey, or Phil in any combination they're in, we thank you for catching our show. We just ask that maybe you consider liking, following, subscribing to us here in hopes that we might be able to introduce you to a future new next favorite band. And if you have a recommendation on who you think our next favorite band should be, please let us know that. Our site has our email, and our socials have the ability to, you can comment right there, and or do a DM, and we would love to hear your recommendations on that. We got tons of great shows coming up, and of course we have that No Planet B Jamboree coming up on April 16th, so let's hope we can all check that out and catch a live show together soon. It's all over now. And here is Try to Forget It by 7Horse.
Some say the end is near. Might as well lay down and quit. Another day in isolation. All I want to do is get lit. Well, I don't know, but I've been told there once was a promised land. I took a loaner to Miami, and all I found was a suitcase full of sand.